I've been reborn dozens of times. And every damn time it ends with the crazy male lead capturing and killing me. People spread rumors about me and bullied me, all because the female lead got upset. After I died, she just said she didn't know, and everyone else forgave her. All I got was served you right. This time, the familiar car showed up, and my goal was to send the male lead to jail and get a paternity test read to my father. Looking at Gary cursing me out, I smirked. Gary, you only lost a leg. Jail should be a piece of cake for you, right? Dad, I'm Jenny. I looked at the earnest man in front of me and rolled my eyes internally, but I kept a straight face and carefully asked, so, who are they? Jenny, you were stolen by them. I'm your real dad, and I've been looking for you for 19 years. As he hugged me, I looked up, facing my adoptive parents, who were frozen in shock. With a soft smile, I looked back at them. Just like the past dozen times, Jack took me away from them and brought me back. The building and the people waiting at the door were all too familiar. My heart was steady. Is this Jenny? A beautiful woman at the front rushed toward me eagerly. Jack confirmed, then told me, Jenny, this is your mom. The smile I'd practiced in the mirror hundreds of times came in handy. A slight smile, just enough to make me seem like the meek and pitiful daughter she hoped for. As expected, she hugged me tightly. Jenny, you've suffered. Susan kept reassuring me with those same words. I lifted my hand to hug her back. Mom, Susan responded, you two can catch up later. Let Jenny meet her brother and sister. Jack interrupted Susan's overflowing affection. The siblings, who had been standing aside, stepped forward under Jack's cue. This is your sister, Jack introduced. This is a gift for Jenny. Cindy, my so-called sister, broke the ice, taking a gift from the butler and handing it to me. I looked at Cindy, sweet and innocent, and accepted her gift with a smile. Thanks. Cindy smiled shyly. My half-brother, standing by with arms crossed, snorted, intending to sneer until Cindy tugged his sleeve, deflating him immediately. I kept my smile up. Looking at this seemingly detached family, it was like seeing old friends again. Was this my 13th or 14th time repeating this? I lost track. I had died over a dozen times already. Once I realized I was stuck in a loop, knowing I was the side character, and not the heroine, I tried to turn the tables. But whether I opposed the female lead or went along with her, any slight displeasure from her meant I was doomed to a tragic end. And the lead of this world was Cindy, who had lived in my place for 19 years. I worried about being kicked out, and after a drunken night, spilled my fears to the male side character. After that, the female supporting character, me, suffered a slew of school bullying. She was disfigured out of envy that she wasn't as pretty as me. Within no time, she went bankrupt, because her inheritance didn't match others. The male lead orchestrated everything, just to get a laugh from his beloved. In the novel's logic, absurd stuff made complete sense. Like the gift box I once cherished out of naive appreciation, inside was a toad that almost suffocated me. Cindy's innocent act and Gary's defense led to me being accused of a malicious setup born out of jealousy. Cindy always knew the truth, but cried when questioned. That time, I was despised from the start. After all these loops, my patience had run out. I looked at the gift and asked, with a smile, mind if I open it now? Of course, Cindy nodded. Ignoring Gary's nervousness, I untied the ribbon and opened the box. As soon as I saw what was inside, Susan shrieked, knocking the box over. A toad jumped out, hopping straight for Gary. Chaos erupted. As the toad neared Gary's clothes, I tossed the box, hitting the toad off course and nailing Gary's nose. Before anyone could react, I stomped on the toad, looking at Cindy with her pale face. Is this my sister's gift? Very unique, but a little scary. Jack was first to react, sharply inspecting Cindy. Jenny just got back, and as her sister, you've disappointed us, Cindy. She looked about to cry, head shaking. No, it wasn't me. As Jack was about to speak again, Gary, clutching his nose, muttered, I did it. Has nothing to do with Cindy. Who knows if she's really their child? If those people could do it once, they could do it again, Gary protested. Jack fumed. Watching Gary making excuses, I shrank away, nestling into Susan's embrace. Susan, am I really your child? I asked. Susan immediately silenced the father-son face-off. Jack, handle your son. Jenny is my daughter. Don't push it. With that, he was about to drag me inside. As we passed by Cindy, who was frozen in place, I caught her gaze and flashed a wicked smile. Seeing the terror on her face made my mood soar. I've put up with you guys for lifetimes. Anyone who holds back now is a coward. Gary, having been served a wake-up call, was unusually quiet at the dinner table. When Jack started talking about my academic future, Cindy was ready with her comeback. Jenny is coming to our school, right? Will she be in my class? Cindy asked. Yes, your sister is in class A and the student council president. When you join, let her introduce you to some friends, Jack chimed in. Cindy, glowing with satisfaction, nodded along to Jack's remarks. Together, they decided on my school transfer. I couldn't care less. After reliving this life multiple times, I was sick of those college entrance exams. As their conversation lulled, I dragged my knife and fork across my plate, creating a sharp noise. It drew everyone's attention. I put down the utensils. Sorry, I'm just not used to this. Jack frowned and called for someone to bring me chopsticks. Jenny, maybe you should learn some etiquette at home for now. You know, all the students there are from wealthy families, Jack suggested, leaving the implications unsaid. I picked up a slice of beef and chewed slowly. Sure, I just got back and there's a lot I need to learn. Susan, sitting next to me, patted my head apologetically. Now that I'm back, when will Cindy meet her biological parents? I asked. I could take you to see them. They're decent folks, just a bit of gamblers, prefer sons over daughters, and a bit lazy. Almost sold me to an old man, but nothing a knife couldn't solve. As the heroine, you must be stronger than me. Cindy went pale, and her fork and knife clattered loudly as they fell from her hands. Jenny, Jack warned, glaring at me. Cindy was swapped as a child. She was innocent then, a victim. 18 years of raising her. Why should we just give that up to those people? Got it. I shrugged, understanding his point. Across from me, Cindy lowered her head and began to cry, her tears falling artistically. Right on cue, Gary slammed the table. Jenny, stop pushing it. Cindy is the real daughter of the house. I quickly forced out some tears under his fierce gaze. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I said something wrong and made things awkward for you. As Susan comforted me in her arms, Gary's 2-month allowance got slashed. Infuriated, he stormed out, slamming the door behind him with a thud. The chain of events left Cindy too stunned to continue crying. Once she recovered, she begged Jack to forgive Gary. But in the end, Jack insisted I start school ASAP, citing the looming pressure of senior year. On the first day of my transfer, Cindy and I arrived at the school gate in a car. As the heroine, Cindy was already renowned. She was somewhat of a school celebrity, even a goddess figure. Suddenly, she had a sister, or so they said, that the second daughter was found. In a place overrun with spoiled rich kids, they'd naturally let their imaginations run wild. So, when I saw the empty seat covered in graffiti, with the chair missing, I wasn't surprised at all. In previous loops, this was a common tactic. Everyone's eyes were intentionally, or unintentionally drawn towards me, with undisguised hostility coming from the back of the class. That's the second male lead of the book, and the bully who tormented the supporting female character. I walked to the back of the classroom, backpack slung over my shoulder. The guy sitting there gave me a disdainful look. Hey, new kid, your seat's over there, didn't you see? I didn't bother listening to his rambling. Filled with resentment from past lives, I kicked the chair from under him, sending him sprawling forward. I stepped on his book and picked up the chair. Thanks for the chair, hope we get along. Just then, I grabbed a napkin to wipe my hands. The voice of justice finally arrived, delayed but unmistakable. Soft and slightly sugary, it carried the authoritative tone of the student council president. Jenny, how could you bully a classmate? I clicked my tongue in annoyance. The second male lead, just picking himself up off the floor, tried to play it cool as the heroine arrived. Cindy hurried over to apologize. Sorry, my sister is new here and a bit unruly. The hero swallowed his anger, forcing a stiff smile and clutching his stomach. Jenny, apologize, Cindy demanded. I ignored her and tapped my fingers on the desk. Cindy, is this my seat? Cindy was momentarily speechless upon seeing the vandalized desk. This unnamed classmate told me it was mine. Since there was no chair, I borrowed one from him. He seemed eager to help. Let me clean it up for you. Cindy opened a wet wipe, bowing her head to clean my desk. Cindy obviously knew why things were the way they were. Her vague comments misled everyone into believing I was an illegitimate child, leading to this treatment. She adept played the victim on moral high ground. This classmate, I said, handing a packet of wet wipes to Mike. My sister's working so hard to clean the desk. Why not help her out? Consider it a thank you. Cindy pitifully acted as I instructed, and I easily tricked Mike into helping. In typical story fashion, someone had to stand up for the main character. Sure enough, a girl with wavy hair sitting in front of Mike crossed her arms and stood up. Cindy, you're too easy to push around. Even an illegitimate kid is acting up. If it were me, I'd slap her so she knows her place. No, it's not like that, Cindy mumbled. Mike, suddenly enlightened, snatched the wipes from Cindy and tossed them aside. "You're the real daughter. How dare an illegitimate child act smart?" Illegitimate child, the term used against me in past lives, was now on someone else's lips. I fixed my gaze on Cindy, amused. "Cindy, is that how you introduced me?" Cindy, face drained of color, shook her head with teary eyes. "So, you recognize the disgrace of being an illegitimate child, huh? Who gave you the nerve to bully Cindy?" This girl figured out my weak spot, and kept coming at me. It's always like this. No matter how much I try to stay away from the leading lady, I end up getting bullied at school out of nowhere or randomly labeled as an illegitimate child. Finally, when the truth comes out, all I get is a light serves you right. The culprit might shed a few tears, and suddenly everyone is eager to forgive her little mistakes on behalf of the victim. It's just a misunderstanding, right? So why hold a grudge? As I saw the girl's sharp fingers about to poke me, I grabbed her wrist, making her yelp in pain. "Cindy, is that true? Am I an illegitimate child?" I let go of her wrist. The girl covered her hand, eyes filled with fear, while I tilted my head to look at Cindy hiding behind Mike. "I never said Jenny is an illegitimate child," Cindy choked out. Upon hearing this, Mike and the others' expressions changed. "Then who am I?" "I'm Jack and Susan's kid, right? And who are you?" I asked Cindy. Her eyes were pleading. I'm familiar with that look. I've begged people countless times, asking them to leave me alone. It never worked. So, I stopped relying on others. Relying on myself is the wisest choice. But the world's favorite child doesn't get it. Her life is too smooth sailing. Let's try a different question. Why was I out in the world for 18 years? Cindy, as the student council president, why don't you explain it to everyone? I'm afraid I can't make it clear. I said, well, because Jenny was swapped at birth. Cindy replied timidly. So who was swapped with me for 18 years? I continued. What are you all doing here? It's class time. A guy walked in, frowning as he pulled the on the verge of breaking down Cindy away, dispersing the crowd. Typical leading lady, always someone to save her. I glanced at Edward, who took Cindy away, and chuckled. I wiped off the rest of the doodles from the desk and sat down. Why are you just standing there without a chair? Mike stared after the two leaving figures, but snapped out of it at my reminder. With a huff, he chased after them. After a dozing math class, Gary, who had run away from home, showed up at the Class A door. Who is Gary here to see? I initiated a conversation. Gary tried to push me, but I avoided his hand, standing arm's length away. Go tell Cindy I'm here for her, Gary commanded impatiently. Cindy's not here. She went out with a guy and hasn't been in class this period. I replied, where could she be if she's not in class? Gary looked like a betrayed husband, furious. No idea, I said casually. As Gary turned to go look for her, he stopped after a few steps and turned back. Naturally, he held out his hand for money. Transfer me $2,000. Gary, I only get paid $5,000 a month, I protested. Just transfer it, no backtalk, he threatened with a menacing aura. Before he could grab my arm, I slapped him across the face, leaving a mark on his soft skin. Gary looked ready to explode, so I grabbed his collar, holding him in place, and whispered in his ear. You might want to be careful, Gary. If the casino gets raided, think your dad will bail you out. I patted his face as he stared at me in shock. Oh, and I don't like people swearing at me, Gary. Be polite when you talk to me from now on, got it? Letting go of his collar, Gary stood in a daze, still processing. Alright, you can find Cindy on the rooftop now. She's so kind, she'll surely help you with the money. Gary walked off dazedly, holding back my curiosity. I also wanted to go see what's up. I wondered who was holding Cindy now. Regardless, Gary would be pissed. Sure enough, right after school, I saw Cindy, who had been MIA all afternoon, trailing behind Gary with her head down. She kept trying to grab Gary's arm, but he shook her off each time. As they approached, I lowered my car window. Gary, heading home for money today. Gary froze mid-step. Who's going home? Get her out of here. She keeps following me. Gary, you haven't been home in 3 days. Mom and Dad miss you. Please don't be mad, Cindy pleaded softly. Seeing a chance to de-escalate, Gary's demeanor softened a bit. Cindy seized the moment, signaling to me with her eyes. Jenny, help persuade Gary. Families shouldn't hold grudges overnight. He shouldn't stay mad. Since Cindy is so keen on harmony, I'll leave persuading Gary to her. I'll be waiting for the good news at home, I said. Watching their baffled faces outside, I leaned back in my seat and told the driver, drive on. They need some personal space. As the car moved, I wondered if Gary would actually come home tonight. I decided I needed to deal with a few things ahead of time. It's hard to contain my anger seeing him every day. At dinner, Gary acted like the past 3 days of Cold War hadn't happened, chatting with Jack like usual. Dad, I want to apologize to you and Mom today. It was my attitude that day that upset you. After dinner, Gary brought it up, even apologizing sincerely. While I was the one who deserved the apology, Jack just needed an excuse to forgive his son. So he went ahead and forgave him on my behalf. From now on, you, Cindy, and Jenny are family. You're the older brother. You need to take care of your sisters, got it? Jack added. Gary acted like he was taking notes. If it wasn't for Cindy today, I wouldn't have realized how wrong I was. What did she say to you? Family harmony is what's most important, Gary said. That's right. I'm proud of you, son. Jack praised loudly. Cindy lowered her head and smiled shyly. Jenny, learn from your sister, understand? Yeah, Cindy was brought up by me. If you have any problems, you can go to her. Susan offered with a nod when Cindy was mentioned. Peeling an orange, I put a slice in my mouth, the tartness making me blink. Dad, can you give me some more pocket money in the future? Jack frowned, not quite agreeing. Why? Gary and Cindy both get $5,000 a month and never complained. I glanced at the two opposite me, then played sincere. I just found out today that Cindy not only spends on herself, but often helps out Gary too. It's tough for her. And Cindy also has a boyfriend now, which means more expenses. It's hard to manage at this rate. I continued. So Dad, if you could give me more, I could help ease Cindy's burden. Just as the two were about to jump in and explain, I wrapped up my last sentence. Gary might like me a little more, and maybe he'd stop yelling at me. I didn't. You're lying. The two voices overlapped, trying to defend themselves. Really? I tilted my head. So, the guy who ditched class all day with Cindy, isn't he your boyfriend? After planting a seed of doubt, Susan persuaded me to head back to my room. Gary and Cindy were called into the study by Jack, who was barely holding his temper. Not long after, the clear sound of glass shattering echoed through two doors. Jack's furious voice demanded an answer from Gary. How old are you? You actually dared to go to a place like that? Then it was just Jack's angry rant, mixed with Gary's crying and Cindy's attempts to calm things down. I pushed open the door, hoping to enjoy the chaos. Susan appeared in the hallway, holding a plate of fruit, standing outside. My face quickly shifted from smug to innocent. Mom, the noise from Dad and Gary is scaring me, I called out sweetly. Susan's eyes signaled me, and I immediately took the fruit platter. I know you don't like Gary, but don't overdo it, okay? She whispered before heading downstairs, looking just as clever as always. Yet her indecisive nature might end up causing her trouble. If it were me, I wouldn't let a stepchild, older than her own kid, run amok under my roof. Who knows what finally pushed Jack over the edge? His voice, shouting about family discipline, filled the villa. I watched the butler hesitate in the hallway, holding a stick. I threw away the banana peel and stepped forward. Uncle, I'll take it to Dad. Without waiting for his permission, I grabbed the stick and went in. Inside the study, there were broken ashtrays, scattered papers, and a furious father along with a pair of pitiful siblings. Never seen a scene like this before. How exciting. What are you doing here? Jack asked gruffly. I noticed the butler was hesitant, so I helped him bring it in, I said, handing the stick to Jack. Is it Gary who's facing the family discipline? Jenny, who do you think you are? You little whack. The sound of the stick striking flesh was both sharp and loud. Gary gasped as he clutched his arm and fell to the floor, breathing heavily. Jack held the stick, panting. Gary, have you given all the lessons I taught you to the dogs? This is your sister, and you call her a brat. So young, gambling with money. Today, I'll really drill some sense into you. The stick swung down over and over, the sound echoing with each hit. Gary rolled on the ground in pain, tears and snot all over his face, transitioning from stubbornness to sobbing. Dad, I know I was wrong. Cindy cried the whole time, hugging Jack's leg, begging him to stop. When I caught Cindy's pleading eyes, my smile refused to fade. I mouthed, serves you right. Once Jack was exhausted, he loosened his grip on the stick, sat down for a breather. Then he turned to me. Jenny, head to your room and rest. You have school tomorrow. Jack's no fool. He calmed down and realized he'd been set up, but all he did was give me a warning look. The two on the floor, pitifully supporting each other to sit up. What a shame I didn't capture it on my phone. But there's always another day, another chance. I picked up the fallen stick, returned it to the butler still outside the door. Back in my room, I took out my phone, dialed an unnamed number. Gary's won't be coming this week, maybe next. After his scolding, Gary laid low for a few days, until his wounds healed, showing up at the casino entrance again. I stood by the window, watching across from the casino. Still on the call, I watched Gary get let in by the guards, and said, make it today. The Inn family's house was busy late into the night. I sat on the couch, napping a bit, while Cindy, also on the couch, couldn't sit still. Jenny, Do you know what's happening? She asked. Protagonists in novels usually have a signature fragrance. Cindy was no exception. Just leaning in, I was hit by the strong scent. I gestured for her to stop at about arm's length. We're just talking, no need to be so close, I said. Cindy bit her lip, sat back down, and asked again. Anyone would panic if they lost money, especially such a big amount, I replied. When Gary was brought back, he looked a mess. His clothes were torn, and with the rain outside, he looked like a drowned rat. Normally, the housekeeper would have tea and towels ready, but today, Gary, caught in misdeeds, was only fit to kneel. Jack and Susan sat in the main seats, looking down at him. Return what you took, and we'll call it even, Jack demanded. It's gone, Gary murmured. Gone? 8 million, gone in one night. Jack slapped the chair. Susan tried calming Jack, who was about to explode. Leaning in, she asked, where did you spend that much? 8 million isn't pocket change. What could make you go so far? Gary stayed silent, and Jack rose in the next breath to kick him over. You gambled again. You did, didn't you? Am I too lenient? Gone, just like that. Damn you, Jack fumed. Jack, maybe Gary has his reasons. Take it easy. He's still recovering. Cindy somehow moved next to Gary protectively. Gary stumbled but managed to get up again, clutching Jack's leg, crying. I was forced. If I didn't pay back, they'd cut off my fingers. I was terrified. That's why I did it, Jack. I truly realize now. Jack, breathing heavily, pointed at Gary, but couldn't squeeze out words for a while, and finally vented his fury on Cindy, who protected Gary. His reasons, there's a project pending, and 8 million vanished just like that. Get out. Gary, still stubborn, wouldn't budge. I finished an entire orange and spoke up. Gary, maybe step out and think things over. Seeing you just makes Jack angrier. Would you only be satisfied when he's driven to his grave? You? His glare was filled with resentment. I just grinned broadly and mockingly. Maybe what I said was harsh but true. The leading lady, who's got more poise than Gary, finally got a wake-up call. She whispered something into his ear, persuading him to leave. He walked away, looking back every 10 steps like a dutiful son. All right, now the immediate issue is how to fix the mess he made. Susan spoke up, trying to calm Jack down. I shifted my position on the couch. Watching Jack's anxious expression, I was once again impressed by Susan's composure. She could easily pull out 8 million from her account, yet she sat there, watching with indifference. Isn't Cindy close with the class president? His family is one of the wealthiest in City A. If Cindy asks for help, wouldn't the 8 million be well within reach? After Jack's one-sided discussion came to nothing, I suggested an idea. Cindy, who had just composed herself, looked up in panic. No, we're just good friends, she stammered. Exactly. Good friends help each other out. I'm sure if Cindy asks, her good friend can help our family through this crisis. Then you'd be our hero, right? I encouraged her half-heartedly. Like clinging to a lifeline, Jack's gaze was fixed on Cindy, his voice passionate. Cindy, I heard your class president's family is the richest in City A. That's great. I always encouraged you to make friends, and you've done well. If this works out, you'll be our family's hero, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. How about asking your friend for a loan? It sounded like a question, but there was no room for her to refuse. As someone always like a timid vine, she didn't protest much, hesitantly agreeing. Looking at this picture-perfect scene of a loving father and daughter, my smile grew wider. Finally, everyone was in place. It wasn't surprising to run into Gary, who got kicked out on the way home from school. I even had to dismiss the driver to give him a chance. You've got me in trouble with your big mouth, now I'm homeless. Gary, who's been wandering the streets for days, smelled awful. My immediate reaction to back away from him made him misunderstand. He whipped out a knife, waving it in front of me. Scared now? Too late. Check this out. You actually have quite a bit of money in that account of yours. Now, transfer all of it to my account, and I'll only slap you once. How's that? When I remembered him almost hitting me with his car, just to cash in some insurance, a slap felt almost like a favor. Looking at Gary, who was more like a buffoon, I couldn't help but laugh. Gary, instantly enraged, grabbed my collar, warning me not to drink the penalty wine instead of the toast. You've had it rough lately, haven't you? No home and dodging debt collectors. Poor you. You've been looking into me. I could almost pity you. But Cindy, she's doing just great. Our dad favors her a lot. Want to know why? Why? Because I stretched out the word, casting the final bait. Her best friend from our class president's family is the sole heir, you know. His pocket change alone is several times what's in my account, and he's super generous. He's supposedly loaning us 8 million to get through this. And I bet, if Cindy asked, he'd help you out too, right? Gary let go, and I quickly stepped away. I pulled out my phone and wired him $1,000. Consider this my goodwill. Buy yourself a meal and some new clothes. Cindy's been chatting about you a lot lately. After getting the foolish and vile Gary on his way, I took off the jacket he touched and tossed it in the trash, feeling disgusted. Lately, my family's put Cindy on quite the pedestal, fully satisfying her vanity. Jack would ask 3 times a day about the money, and at the slightest frown from Cindy, he'd immediately hush up, joking, who wouldn't behave when their lives depend on it. But Cindy's been skipping family dinners a lot lately. Jack started to get anxious, sending someone to track her down. Slowly, I peeled the shrimp and popped it into my mouth. A desperate Gary should soon find his dear sister. With the burden from family and the clear understanding that once she asks for money, her relationship with the male lead would change, it's no wonder she'd rebel a bit. I sent my prepared message, lending her a hand to escape sooner. She's with her birth parents. Jack, enraged, threw down her whereabouts, pacing the living room. Just because I asked her to help the family, she's disowning us. 19 years gone to waste on ingrates. With Susan away, I was his captive audience for this personal rant session. Occasionally, I'd nod along. Only when he tired and sat down, did he seem to remember I was there. Jenny, you should remember where your adoptive parents live, right? Go bring your sister back. It was an order more than a request. As luck would have it, I needed to swing by there anyway, so I agreed conveniently. Once at the place where I spent the last 19 years, a bundled-up middle-aged woman saw me and hurried over. Why are you here? Come home for lunch. I'll make meatballs. My adoptive mom's expression immediately turned sycophantic. Got it. I cut straight to the chase, not bothered by her hypocrisy. Got it, got it. She handed me a phone SIM card. I just suggested she turn off her phone for a few days, relax a bit, plan her next steps before facing anything. Then I swapped the SIM. She didn't notice a thing. My adoptive mother started explaining her methods in detail. Let's hope. I kept the SIM. I've sent the money over already. Wrap things up as agreed. We'd better both stick to the contract's terms. Reassured once the money hit their account, my adoptive mom nodded vigorously. Jenny, what are you doing here? Out of nowhere, Cindy rushed over, placing herself protectively in front of my adoptive mother. You came to take me back, didn't you? If you're mad at me, take it out on me, not her, okay? She slipped right into the victim role, ready to challenge this villain in front of her with practiced ease. I glanced at the uneasy mother and the righteous Cindy, then scoffed. Stay as long as you want, no one's gonna push you. Once I got in the car, I swapped Cindy's SIM card and deleted all the junk messages. Found Edward's contact, texted him pretending to be Cindy, complaining about recent events. After sending the message, I powered off the phone without waiting for a reply. Isn't this all about crazy obsession and forced love? Let's see how crazy you can get. Not long after, news came through that Gary got hit by a car. What goes around comes around. In a past life, he made me a cripple for insurance money. Now Edward's love made Gary a cripple. Serves him right. Jack's been taking his meds more frequently lately. The company's funds are in trouble, and the only adopted daughter with any hope has run away in rebellion. And now his only son has been hit, and they can't even find the culprit. Easy enough to see that Gary tangled with the wrong people. Lucky he's just got one bad leg now. Though I said I'd kick Gary out, he's still his only son, so Jack rushed to the hospital. I turned on my phone after it had been off for several days. Message after message from the male lead popped up. I patiently replied to his messages, set up to meet him tonight, where the female lead first met the male lead. Got a surprise for him. Just like in all those novels, the female lead saves the boy barely clinging to life in a dark alley. Since then, the boy becomes the female lead's loyal puppy, ready to do anything. Susan's been coming and going a lot lately. I know what she's up to, so I don't bother with it. If she can stick with someone with no brain, she's got to be as sharp as a sword when she's serious. Jack's either at the hospital or God knows where, but is not home at night. Just as I figured, I put on some easy-to-move-in clothes and headed to meet Edward. No clue what Edward's thinking. He showed up at this ridiculous meeting spot without hesitation. When I arrived, Edward was already there waiting. I approached from the back. Gotta say, Edward's got some vigilance. Even when I approached quietly, he sensed something. But I was faster. After failures in past lives, I learned self-defense. Before he could realize, I kicked him down and he grunted as he fell. Quickly, I covered his head with a black hood I prepared, grabbed the stick and knocked him out. Every kick I gave was full of hatred. Just because he's Edward, does he think he can dance on the edge of crime at will? He revoked Cindy's inheritance, locked me up in a dark basement, and tortured me. Before I died, he even brought Cindy in to see my poor state like it was a reward. Cindy was shocked by my emaciated look, but had this weird light in her eyes. Are you, Jenny? I spat blood at her with all my strength. Edward finished me off in the next second. The last noise I heard was Cindy complaining that I dirtied her dress. Remembering all that, I kicked harder. After I was done, I got this high-priced software from the black market to totally wipe his phone. Cleared the whole thing, back end included. Then dragged his body over like a dead dog. I aimed a kick right at his lower body. Right when he woke from the pain, I knocked him out again. What's up? I messed up your Edward. Flipping off the sky, I said screw destiny. I'm done with this scripted plot line. The next day, the richest families hit the headlines for multiple crimes, including hiring someone to hit Gary. The truth was undeniable. Even the richest couldn't twist it around. They had to watch their only heir sent to jail. Gary, seeing the news in the hospital, laughed wildly. Since he got a bad leg, he's been very moody. Now that the one who caused it got punished, he was naturally thrilled. Serves him right, he yelled. I pushed the door open. In a good mood lately. Ignoring his face turning sour, I sat on the edge of the bed. Why you? Where's Cindy? Why didn't she come? You mean Cindy? Didn't you know? She cut ties with us a few days ago. Cindy decided to cut ties with Jack, stirred up by her adoptive mom's family. Jack got so mad. Cindy never appreciates what's good, and she'll dump you as soon as things don't go her way. Same every life. Back then Edward hadn't fallen, so she had her backbone of arrogance. She made herself out to be a poor girl barely holding on for 19 years. Jack couldn't refuse, so he signed the papers. Wondering what the female lead and Jack were thinking now after seeing the news, I could only smile. Was it you? You've been stirring things up since you came back. Nothing's been peaceful since, Gary shouted from the hospital bed like he just figured it out. I tilted my head, watching him rage pointlessly. So what? Better figure out how to live as a cripple now. Just then, the door swung open. Gary's eyes lit up seeing who arrived. Dad, that little brat did it all. She admitted she set everything up, including getting me attacked by debt collectors. Expecting me to be humiliated, the next second his face got slapped hard. Jack clutched a paper report. No wonder, you're a bastard after all. Dad? Gary looked at Jack, bewildered, holding his cheek. Jack was in a daze, mumbling. No wonder, how could I have such a son? It was all that woman's trick, he accused while reaching out to hit him. Gary grabbed his arm in confusion. Dad, what's wrong? Why's this happening? Don't call me Dad. I'm not your father. Jack tried pulling Gary away, and in the struggle, the paper report fell. I stooped to pick it up and read the final section aloud. Based on DNA test results, it turns out Gary doesn't match with Jack in 13 gene markers, so they have no biological father-son relationship. It's like he got triggered. Gary instinctively fought back. Recently, Gary's been stressed out, dealing with health issues like high blood pressure. He was already fuming, and then he accidentally pushed Jack during a scuffle. Jack fell straight back, hitting the edge of the table hard enough to get knocked out, even bleeding. Gary just stood there, shocked. I stopped video recording on my phone and sighed. Seems like you found your future, I said sarcastically. When Susan reached the hospital, Gary was already in custody, and Jack was in the ER. What's going on? Susan asked, frowning after signing some documents. Was she asking me? I looked up at her. Basically, Dad found out by accident, during a prenatal checkup, with Auntie that Gary wasn't his biological son. Gary accidentally pushed Dad, during the argument, and now he's in surgery. Luckily, I got it all on video, proving Gary pushed Dad. Now he's fighting for his life. Susan glanced over at a woman sitting nearby, clutching her belly. Then she gave me a light smack on the head. Why do you have to meddle? Weren't you networking with those company guys, Mom? I'm just helping you out. Everyone in the family knew about Jack's secret affair, which is why Susan sped up her career comeback, given Jack would soon realize he's been sidelined. To prevent any severe shock for him, I laid the groundwork. Didn't expect Gary to play his part so well. Susan gave me a look. She handed me her purse for safekeeping, and with her high heels clicking, went off to negotiate with the woman. I'll take Auntie to the clinic later. You wait here. Not long after, Susan took her purse back, and the woman left with her. Susan looked so cool, I couldn't help but admire her. Jack suffered a neurological injury when he fell, and despite the timely rescue, his chances of waking up are in fate's hands now. Susan peeled an apple for me at the bedside. It's sweet, Mom, I said, taking a bite and showering her with compliments. Cut the crap, said Susan, not falling for it, crossing her legs as she asked, Tell me what's really going on. I shrugged, wide-eyed. I already told you. Gary's DNA test was something I arranged, because I thought he was too ugly and dumb, unlike our family. Who knew it was true? Turns out in another life, Gary got ahead and kicked me and Susan out of our home. He brought back some middle-aged couple saying they were his real parents. That's when I realized Jack was outmatched from the start. Susan sighed. Just focus on your studies for the college entrance exams. I'll handle everything else, got it? I nodded eagerly. Having someone handle the mess was a relief. Before long, Jack was declared a vegetable. Susan sued Gary, and he's looking at a long prison sentence. Maybe 10 years or more. Susan took over the company and revamped it. I drew a massive X over Gary and Jack's names on my paper. I was just about to check the stocks when Cindy and Mike approached the table. Are you satisfied now? Cindy asked accusingly. What did I do recently? I wondered aloud, looking confused. Did you interfere with my brother? She accused. Even if my parents weren't great, they tried their best, but why did you keep pushing them? Her hint reminded me. I had her brother, who's been working at an underground casino, taken down. Oh, your brother, I thought aloud, remembering. He chose that path, working as an enforcer. The casino got into trouble, and someone had to take the fall. The weakest link and all. Sure, I orchestrated it, but he was an easy target. You? Cindy's eyes welled up with tears. You made my parents retire early, and my brother had no choice. I looked at Cindy's angry expression. So, you're confirming you're not one of us anymore. Caught off guard, she stammered but eventually said, so what? Your family was already tanking in the industry. Why should Cindy suffer with you? Mike, filled with indignation, voiced his strong opinion. It seems the universe tried making up for Edward's absence by bumping Mike up. He was the utterly useless youngest son, gone soft. So, could you stop bothering my mom, please? You were camped at my house yesterday, forcing me to sneak out the back. After their only son went to jail, Cindy's family gave up on pretenses, pushing Cindy to bail him out. She was helpless. All options were gone, and she turned to Susan. But Susan wasn't a sucker. Cindy took off during the worst of times, exposing her true selfish nature. The door never opened, yet she stubbornly waited outside for 2 hours. Even called over an old man, saying she'd upset her mom. The old man kept knocking, pitying her, until Susan explained. Realizing he'd been duped, he helped Susan boot Cindy out. Cindy turned red with embarrassment, fumbling for retort, then ran off crying. Mike shot me a glare before chasing after her. In contrast to the boundless Edward, now Mike was a cakewalk. If he hadn't shown up, I would have forgotten about him. A few days later, as a group was negotiating with the second male lead's family, Susan casually mentioned Mike's current school status. The next day, his family shipped him overseas, barely packing anything. No more freeloading at home. In family profits, he's the first piece to discard. Cindy, bereft of Mike, grew silent. Gossip surfaced when pretending broke out, and dim-witted rich kids began attacking Cindy. Once the untouchable student council president, she lost her rank due to exam failures. Every struggle I endured was now coming back onto Cindy. I had no intent to intervene. After all the cycles, no sympathy left. This is just the beginning. Right before the college entrance results were out, in each of my cyclical deaths, I calmly await judgment. Since I've managed to reach this point this time around, even if I had to start over, I could still turn the tables. As the clock ticks toward midnight, the computer in front of me lets me know I can check my results. I'm still sitting there, just for a second, but I knew I had gambled and won. After taking the college entrance exam several times, I finally got the score I wanted. Susan took me to a riverside restaurant to celebrate. In the quiet restaurant, the sound of glass shattering broke the silence. I turned my head and saw a familiar face apologizing endlessly. Cindy, wearing a server's uniform, was crying with her head down. The manager beside her kept apologizing and instructed Cindy to clean up the broken glass. Cindy, trying to pick up the shards with tape, cut her finger on a sharp edge. Her tears flowed even more. Feeling somewhat uninterested, I looked away. The noise behind me grew louder, so I put down my knife and fork. Mom, can we go somewhere else? It's too noisy. Sure. As we passed by Cindy, I caught her pleading look, but I couldn't be bothered to respond. People who never learn to save themselves can only suffer.